Welcome to the Conservation Commission meeting, Wednesday, September 27th, 2023, 7 p.m. And our agent, Mary, is going to start the meeting with a 7 o'clock hearing.
Great. So we had written a letter to the residents at 52 Elm Street because there was an expansion of lawn into the buffer zone, and just kind of asked them to appear to talk about what their plans were and what we might ask them to do. And I'll just share my screen. I have a few pictures of kind of what was going on there. All right, it takes a few minutes to load this. All right, so here's the property in question. This is 52 Elm Street. This is Kiwanis Beach Road. And back here, there's a pond. I talked to the homeowner. He said he thought it was a man-made pond a long time ago. It is listed as a potential vernal pool on the GIS layer. And this is kind of the property as it was a little over a year ago. This area has always been open, but it's been kind of shrubby and apparently had a lot of bittersweet in it. And this is how it looks in the winter. You can get a much better view of the pond. This is last winter. You can see the area is still, it's been kind of a shrubby area. I don't think it's had trees for a long time. And then this summer they did some work to clear it out and put lawn in. And I believe this section, I think it's about 20 feet from the pond. That may still be, they left that vegetation there, but the homeowner is here. Benjamin, I believe his name is. And Benjamin, do you want to, tell about what you did and what your plans are?
Sure. Sorry about that. You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I might have to move my computer. It's not the best signal. Yeah, what we did was we cleared basically like you said, the brush that was there. Was all grown, and we just basically turned it in lawn space. And to your point earlier, was the pond that's in there was man-made by the previous. We have some like photos of that, but
I can't hear anything.
I think he's in and out. He's struggling with a connection.
Kind of got rid of some of the invasive species that are in there as well with the bittersweet.
Can you repeat that?
I think he was saying that the lawn, this area had been overgrown with, I think the original.
I think I lost audio here.
Whatever, dudes. Whatever. Jeez.
There we go. I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
I just add the person who's commenting, maybe stop doing that, or at least identify yourself.
Go ahead, Benjamin. If you have
I was having trouble connecting. I apologize. Did you guys hear anything I said?
Yeah, we heard bits and pieces.
Right. I moved closer here to Wi-Fi. So yeah, like you said earlier, all we did was clear out the brush, if you will, that was in there. Like you said, there was no trees in there. I think I mowed it down. There actually was a little sapling of something that was in there, so I left that, and it's actually grown. That you can see if you go by the house, you can see that's like in the middle of that area now. Yeah, right there. I think it might be like a pussy willow tree or something, but so we left that, but everything else was old brush, and I think the family before us tried to plant lupins in there, and they didn't take off, so they just kind of let it go. But there's no other plan for that space other than just to use it as yard space, just to keep it cleared out.
Yeah, so we had written the letter because it was work within 100 foot of I determined that this is, even if it's a vernal pool, it seems to have some kind of connectivity to Pratt Pond through an intermittent stream or a stream bed. Although it's a kind of it's a minor one. So, but this would not fall under our Upton bylaw because the house is old. So we did talk about, maybe he'd be willing to, maintain like a 30-foot buffer of natural vegetation between the lawn and the pond. And potentially, I'm not sure if we talked about this or not. There's obviously the potential of putting some plantings in there. It did sound like there was a fair bit of bittersweet that he cleaned out, which we talked about, and how that's obviously very beneficial to be getting rid of invasive species. So I don't know if anyone on the board has any further comments. I think the homeowner is aware now that, if he's going to be doing work around here, to contact the commission. And maybe we just want to give him a guideline of, keeping a buffer between the lawn and the pond. And right now it looks like it's about 20 feet of undisturbed.
Yeah, that's probably about right, about 20 feet.
This is Mike on the commission. I just want to note one thing. If a pond like that, even if it's an accidental wetland, is regulated under the Wetland Protection Act. So a pond that's constructed for a purpose like a detention basin is not regulated, but I believe this would, even if it was constructed some years ago, it would still be regulated under the Act.
This is Chris on the commission, where there's 20 feet undisturbed when we usually require 30 or 50, Mary.
Right. So this lot is not subject to the bylaw, which has the 30-foot no disturb. So I think it was more of a policy that the commission had for these kind of lots to have, a 30-foot no disturb. So that's something we can ask him to do. I would think. Or we, could potentially ask if he would be willing to put in some plantings like blueberries or something near the pond, but.
I would think some plantings would be good. And that is something we have required other people to do. So being consistent.
Yeah, this is Tom. I think if, we just pulled it back 30 feet, I think that would be acceptable. I don't think that would be much of an issue. As far as planting goes, is it upland soils or not? That will depend on what you put in for plantings, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. I have not been on the site to look at. I have not been on the site, just been using aerial imagery and drive by. So
if I can ask, what's the upland soil? What's the definition of that?
Right. So if there was wetland soil near the pond, then actually the buffer might actually should go further back. And I think, you might tend to know, like the wetland soil would support wetland plants such as skunk cabbage or cattails. Well, those are obligate plants. And then, there's a gradation, as you get drier, there's other plants that would come in like winterberry or the high bush blueberry. And if it's upland, sometimes a plant that grows nice on the wetland edge is sweet pepper bush. It's, it can handle the upland. It's got nice it's a nice shrub that has flowers in the summer that smell nice. So that could be an option there.
Okay. Yeah, I know, like along that edge there, the 20, 30 feet away, right along that pond edge, like right against it, is definitely the cattails that grow in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if the homeowner is willing, I could go out and look at the property. Maybe we could suggest if you kind of a good buffer area, or we can just state maybe just try to measure 30 foot from the farthest cattail or whatever, the most upland cattail, for the edge of the lawn. It seems like if we were going to ask to put a few shrubs in, I would recommend 2 or 3 of the sweet pepper bush just on that actually might be good to put it kind of along the 30 foot. That way it would kind of be a visual for you to know where the edge of the 30 foot is, or for future homeowners as just kind of an edge.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think I have an issue with that. I don't know where to get them, but I'll have to look for that.
Yeah, we can give you some recommendations on that.
Mary, this is Mike again. Would the 30-foot zone extend? I guess that would be south of the pool as well. Your cursor was moving more to the north.
Right. So this is all natural, kind of around here. I think.
So, but what about to the south?
To the south, this way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where.
I think so. I think this picture
lower,
is roughly
below the pond. Below
down here.
Whatever. No. Below the pond. Below it. It's funny. Your cursor's towards the road. How about that?
Towards Kiwanis Beach Road?
No, the other road.
This road. Is my cursor not moving in the right spot?
It doesn't seem to be. No.
Okay.
So you're in the middle of the pond now, so go drop below it. That's the area I'm wondering about. Thank you.
All right, so the cursor is not displaying right because I'm in the middle of the lawn right now. You guys see is the blue line on there?
I see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yes, definitely plantings not in the pond, but right where the 30 foot would be. Forget the cursor. And maybe I should stop sharing and try again and see if that fixes it. So is the board another suggestion is we could ask to monitor the pool to see if it is a vernal pool. I did talk to Ben about it, and he didn't really remember hearing any frogs in the spring or anything like that, but that doesn't necessarily, mean anything.
Yeah, this is Tom. I think we should check to see if it is a vernal pool. I think in the spring we should, just see if it is, but.
What does what does that mean? What is the difference between a pond and a vernal pool? What's the difference there?
Vernal pools are offered special protection under the Wetlands Protection Act, just because they're very fertile breeding ground for amphibians, frogs, and salamanders. That they don't breed anywhere else, and it's one thing that's easy to. They're small wetlands that easily get consumed, so they're kind of endangered. So if it's a vernal pool, it just has special protections. And I think in your situation, it wouldn't really affect you much, except that if it was found to be a vernal pool, like all the trees and stuff on the other side of the pond, everything that's wooded now, it would just protect that and make sure that wouldn't ever be cut down. But I imagine, well, I'm not sure what your plans are for the lot, but I don't think that would be a huge problem for a homeowner there.
No, yeah, I'm not planning on cutting anything down.
Yeah.
There are no fish in it.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, it dries out too in the dry summer. So 2 years ago, it was bone dry.
Uh-huh.
Vernal pulls through, dry out.
Got it.
Well, so do we have kind of a consensus? Is Mayor suggesting that we ask for, 30-foot no disturb zone with some plantings? And perhaps the permission of the owner to come take a look at it in the spring to see if it's actually a vernal pool.
That sounds good, Mike.
Is that a consensus with the commission and with the owner?
That works for me.
Works for me. Yeah, me too, Mike.
Me too. So that's all. That's 4 of the members and the owner. We appreciate that. So, Mary, would you be able to stop by and take a look at it?
Yes, certainly. I will. I'll write up a letter or an email, just kind of formalizing our discussion, and put it on my calendar to check it out in the spring. And also, maybe we can say the plantings should be put in by then. Ideally, now is a good time to plant in the fall. So that would be a good time, this fall. Then we can check to see how they're doing in the spring.
And should we put this on our next agenda or the one after?
Yeah, how do you want to deal about it? Do we want to give it maybe we want to give them a couple months to get the plantings in and put it on agenda for November or something like that?
That sounds good.
Okay. So how about the first meeting in November? I don't have the date off the top. I can just check real quick on that date. That is the 8th. So we'll just put you on that agenda to just for you to give us an update about the plantings.
Okay. And then you said you're going to shoot me an email.
I will shoot you an email. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
With that information and the types of plants and stuff like that.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
So, are we all set, Mary?
Yeah, I think we're ready to move on to 44 Milford.
7:15. We have a notice of intent. Continue for the affordable Imperial Gas construction of an addition. Continue from 8:13.
Hi, good evening, John Nanot. I'm here with Imperial Gas Upton, for Imperial Gas Upton. I'm the engineering manager for the company. We met a couple, not last meeting, the meeting before. I just want to let the board know we still don't have a DEP file number. I'm willing to present if the board wants me to, but we still don't have a DEP file number for the notice yet.
We could have you present, but with no DEP number, we cannot close the hearing.
Okay, that's fine.
So, Mary, what would you like?
Yeah, well, you guys can go ahead. Do you want me to put the plans up, or do you prefer to do that?
I have colored versions. I don't know if you have the colored version. I can do that.
Go ahead and share what you got.
Screen.
Besides, my mouse doesn't seem to be working right anyway.
Okay. Let me just minimize this. Can share you. Hang on a second. I'm on vacation, so I'm not on my regular computer. I'm up in Maine right now. Let's see.
This is Nicole Hayes with Goddard Consulting. I can share the plan if need be.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I got
Sure.
kind of let me see, where is my Zoom? I thought I minimized and I lost it. I guess, Mary, why don't you just, yeah, Nicole, if you want to put it up there, you can. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead, Nicole. Why don't you share your screen?
All right, all right, can you see that?
Oh, you know what?
I can pull it up. I've got
I
it.
lost my whole Zoom screen now. Give me 1 second.
All right,
Okay, I got it now. Yeah, I think I'm back. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Okay, I'm back. So at the last meeting, we had discussed doing some plantings in the grass strip behind the gas station. So we've added a bunch of blueberries, witch hazel, sweet fern along the backside of there's probably about a 15-foot grass strip back there. I left a 4 or 5 foot strip along the edge of the parking lot, replant that. We're going to plant that out and try to restore that buffer zone there. We'll put some wetland mix down too, along with the shrubs and stuff that we put. Also at the last meeting, we had discussed trying to do something at this swale in the south, I guess, south easterly corner of the site. I've designed a bioretention, a small bioretention system for there. It has we're going to cut back the asphalt swale almost to the edge of curbing. Put in a 2 foot wide by 2 foot deep pea stone diaphragm. What that'll do is it'll act kind of like a level spreader. It'll let some of the water recharge into that diaphragm, and then it'll come out evenly across a grass filter area, down through some mulch into the bioretention area. I do have a newer plan, Mary. We've listed exactly how many plants we have in there. It would be a combination. I have a listing of the plants that they can use at the bottom of the sheet. It'll be a combination of 15 shrubs, and then we're planning on putting 10 to 15 sedges in there as kind of as ground cover to finish up the bottom of that. That bioretention area has about a 7-inch berm. So it'll hold 7 inches, no more than 6 to 7 inches of water. And then that berm will act like a level spreader, spreading the water out so you won't have that point discharge anymore. It should take care of the scouring that was on that bank going down into the wetlands. Other than that, I did have some photos of the back of the property. We did, DEP had requested a stormwater worksheet. We did get that over to DEP. We got a copy to Mary a couple weeks ago, I think, maybe like 10 days ago or something. I haven't heard anything else from Kim Roth at DEP, and we still don't have a DEP file number. This is for you. I don't know if everybody was at the last meeting, but if you, Nicole, if you can move over to the building. This is for a 10-foot addition along the back of the building. That shaded area. In that shaded area, there's already a concrete pad for the majority of the back of the building that's 10 feet wide. There's a small strip you can see that's about 5 feet wide or 4 feet wide that isn't concrete right now, but is grass. So what we're proposing is when we put the addition on is to remove the pavement in the corner at the top of that addition and plant grass there. We're going to be removing about 65 square feet, and we'll be replacing about 74 square feet of grass there. So there's no increase in impervious area on the site. With the new bioretention area, we're cleaning up some of the stormwater from the site. The site is very flat. The only reason that was scouring was because of the bank, and it was the flow was concentrated. Other than that, just about the whole site's, I believe, at 306 or 307. It's a very flat site, so there's not a lot of force coming off the parking lot anymore. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, I just had noticed in your stormwater checklist, you talk about inspecting the stormwater devices. there appears to be a missing word because at first you check them regularly the first 3 months and then it goes to 2 times a year, but there's like missing a word there. So
Yeah,
that
it's fixed. I
Fixed now.
just got it. Bob Duff from G&H just emailed it to me at about 4:30, and I just got back to the house. We were at a restaurant up here, and I just got back to the house. But I did see that he emailed me that he fixed that narrative, and he also added the exact number of plants for the bioretention area of each species on the plan. I know you had mentioned that also, Mary.
yeah.
So those are fixed. They'll be ready for the next meeting. I'll get you new copies of everything.
Yeah, and the log, is that gonna, I don't know how the board feels, you say keep a log about the retention area for 3 years and then you drop the requirement. I mean, it does seem reasonable to check it for 3 years. Obviously, you're still gonna clean it out. As to whether the log is required, I don't know how strongly the board feels on that.
This is Chris. I don't see the need for the log for 3 years, maybe 2.
Well, after 3 years, I just, noted that some, a lot of projects, for stormwater, there's no end. You're always checking it and you're always reporting. But this is a small basin. So yeah, it was just, it ended at 3 years, the logging, even though they're still going to be maintaining it.
And I tried to do something that I could fit on that bank without disturbing the bank. So I did it pretty much as big as I could to still get some total suspended solid removal and some treatment of the water in that area.
I have a question that's not necessarily relating to the permit, but what's the purpose of the addition?
So we're adding, so right now there's like 12 to 14 individual soda coolers, water coolers, milk coolers. They're all standalone units. Each one has its own compressor. It's basically for a 10-foot wide walk-in cooler that has one compressor for the entire thing, the glass door coolers like you see in most convenience stores, and a 5-foot aisle behind it to be able to load it. So the cooler would actually stick into the existing store 5 feet, stick out of the backside of the existing store 5 feet, and then a 5-foot walking aisle to be able to access the cooler behind it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. It's much more energy efficient for us than having 12 or 14 individual coolers, each with their own compressor.
Good. That's a good idea.
Yes.
Does anyone on the commission have other questions?
Yes, Mike, I just have one kind of minor suggestion.
Sure.
For the bioretention area planting detail.
Yep.
Let's scroll to that, perhaps. The species list. I would eliminate Typha angustifolia. It will tend to be aggressive, and it might basically take over the area and you lose diversity. Otherwise, the plant list looks pretty good. But
Okay.
I would suggest taking out the Typha.
Will do.
It's Typha, not typhus. But,
Oh.
but
Okay, Mike. Thank you. Yeah.
I would just add that comment. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
So, Mary, what time would you like this hearing to be continued until?
Shall we make it 7 o'clock next time? Oh, wait, no, we can't do 7. Maybe 7:30.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll continue this to 7:30, and hopefully you'll have the DP number by then. But thank you. We appreciate your cooperation.
Yep. Thank you guys very much. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Bye.
Maine.
Yeah. Good night.
Okay, good night. Bye.
Okay, then we have a little bit of time because our next hearing is at 7:45. So, Mary, would you like to come in with your report, please?
Yes. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. But while I'm pulling it up, just say, went out to 220 Mechanic Street, and this is kind of an interesting one. And he just wanted an opinion, so I told him what I thought, but you guys might have some thoughts on it too. So 220 Mechanic Street is kind of near Grafton Road, I believe. It's right pretty close to Warren Brook. It's riverfront area. The house is older. It's a 1985 house, and he wants to build a second dwelling on the lot, which obviously has zoning implications, which I told him that he needs to take. I recommended he take care of that first. But he will be within the inner 100-foot riparian area. It is all in previously disturbed area. It is, next to his existing house. He has a barn that he's willing to take down and put it where the barn is. He would like to keep the barn. So I just told him I thought the commission might permit an additional dwelling unit there under the Wetlands Protection Act, even though it is within the inner riparian area, but it is all previously disturbed area, some of it grass. So if you guys feel strongly differently about that, and we did look at whether there was any mitigation he could do on his site, and there really isn't. He doesn't have a very big yard. It's not huge. This is a pre-existing house that's already in the inner riparian area. If you guys want, I can pull it up. But I just told him I thought he could proceed with trying to get this permitted. Obviously, he's going to get an engineer and the whole 9 yards and get the wetland delineated, etc.
Mary, I would like to see you pull it up. I may be in a butter. That's one.
Yeah, you might be in a butter.
I have before I say anything to know that.
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
So is he looking to replace the barn with a dwelling and use the same footprint?
So if he's willing to replace the barn, he would kind of like to keep the barn, but if he keeps the barn, there's not a lot of places where he can put it. It's a tight property. So he is willing to get rid of the barn. Okay, let's pull it up for you. So this is, it's bordering Grafton Road. This is, now the river actually, let me look at the aerial. So the river kind of goes back through here. The yard is kind of on a plateau. There's a definite bank here that goes down to, floodplain area. And it could be that the wetland goes right up to the bank. It's likely that it does. I explained that to him. So it's certainly, his current dwelling is, 65 feet or whatever from Warren Brook. And this is the barn here that he's thinking of replacing. He can't, obviously I told him he can't go in this direction at all. He would have to go in this direction with anything that he did. His septic system is right here though, so that's going to limit him. But he has a lot of issues, not just conservation. He has to get approval for putting a second dwelling unit on his lot, which I don't know how that's going to go. So.
Mary, it's Mike. I am in a butter. So the only thing I'm going to say is that based on many years of observations, Warren Brook is intermittent in that location. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it probably shows up as perennial,
Yeah, it does.
unused GIS maps, but it's clearly intermittent. It dries out most summers, not all, but most. So,
Okay.
But anyway, I'm the butter, so I'm not going to say anything else.
Would he need a second septic system?
Yeah, he has a lot of issues. I asked him if he had talked to Board of Health yet, and I think he said no. So I think we may be the last people that he talks to. But Mike, if you think it's potentially intermittent, then that would obviously make it a lot easier for him to develop the slot, to put another unit in, especially if he stays in the previously disturbed area. So.
Does he have any plans yet, or like just a sketch to, like, is there going to be another driveway going to this house, or are they going to use the same driveway?
I didn't ask him about that. He does have an access off of Grafton Road that's already open. You know, he uses it for vehicles, but it's not really paved. So that may be the second access.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that is that. I was pulling up my report and I finally got it up. I can find it.
If you want to think about where he might put his barn, if he wants to put it somewhere.
Oh, you get help, so it's not a bad one. It's help.
All right. Just wanted to update you on a few things. This is a deck that went in on 91 Glen Ave. They asked for kind of a final inspection. This was under determination. Now, the deck itself was fine, but they had used this kind of path as an access road, and they were driving vehicles back there. And unfortunately, that led to undermining a retaining wall that was there. This is the stream right here. Nothing got in the stream. It looks like it did, but nothing did. But there was erosion over the wall. So I did ask them to clean that up. And it looks a lot better now. They fixed the wall. Unfortunately for the homeowner, they kind of ruined the wall a little bit as well. Wall kind of fixed, cleaned up the dirt, and now there's a wattle up. I told them to keep it up all winter just until that walkway, which it had just been kind of dirt before, but with all the construction, they just disturbed it, and with all the rain, I think that's what happened there. I went out to Five Forks Farm. I guess that was last Friday. And I talked to the guys that were on site. They said they were done that day, that they were going to finish up. They've hydro-seeded around the pond and various other areas. The rest of the area they seeded with winter rye, I believe, to get a cover crop in. Now, what I haven't gotten a chance to look at the latest plans and how it was. So this is the outlet to the pond. I'm not sure that there was any water flowing out of it. This is the stone wall here, which has been left intact, and there's definitely still water coming under the stone wall and flowing towards the pond there. And this is the area. This is the outflow again. There's some water sitting there. I'm not sure as whether it's just pooling because you're at ground level or what's going on there. So that's Five Fork Farms. Then if we have I'll leave that for later. So another thing that I did is I met with, there was a complaint about 75 High Street. The auto body shop there that's been in a residential area for many years. So some of the concerns were there's more cars on site than are allowed. There's work outside the building instead of inside. neighbors were complaining about noises and fumes. I have not gotten out to do a site visit yet. There are wetlands around most of the property. I did a search to see if there were any orders or anything for this lot. You would think there would be since the wetlands are close, but I couldn't find anything in the database. So I just wanted to bring it up. Does anyone remember anything about that property or any wetland issues there in the past?
I
Did
don't.
we visit that site? Like, it's one of the first site visits from what I recall from being on the commission, but it was a neighbor complaining, and we came in from the rear to take a look at what was something was being dumped in the wetlands. Does anyone remember that? I don't recall the name of the side street that goes that is sort of close to the place, and that we would have approached from that neighbor's, but I think that might be the same place.
It's likely it's on, I can pull it up. It's on Church Street and the corner of Church Street and High Street.
In any event, I don't know if anybody else remembers that, and I think we had pictures or something at some time, but it's actually the next street down that there was a neighbor on, I think it was the next, not Church Street, but the next street headed east. And I don't know what the name of that one is.
On Stoddard Street?
Yeah, like I think we could like look from the neighbor's backyard. They allowed us back there, and we could see something, but it doesn't look like it's the same. It must be a different thing I'm remembering.
One. Yeah.
I don't think you'd see to the garage itself. So if nobody else is remembering this, then I might just be totally off.
I don't remember it.
Okay. So I'll go out there and do a site visit. I think the concerns are more about, they're more zoning and Board of Health concerns, but I'll just check to see if there's any wetland issues. They are awfully close to the wetland, goes around them like that.
Thank you.
And let's see what else. Probably most of you saw through the email that 24 East Street, the DEP issued a negative superseding order, which means they upheld our determination. And Val has contacted me. He wants more information. I think it sounds like he's planning to submit an appeal. I'm not sure whether it's, and I should maybe ask him, I guess it doesn't really matter there, whether he's appealing their decision or whether he's appealing our decision under the Upton wetland bylaw separately, because his appeal to the state only covers under the state law. So that is going forward. Thank you. And I'll share my screen one more time. So one thing I added to the agent report, if you didn't, it's at the very end. I just decided since as a way to keep track of our enforcement issues, like the letters we've written or whatever, I just decided to start a log so we can kind of, this will help us remember, as opposed to having like an ongoing items. And that, it gives a little bit more information and, kind of reminds us of what's going on. So if you have any suggestions for that, I just put that together for me as much as anyone else, because it seems like it ends up being a lot of things going on. So
Good idea, Mayor.
that's that.
Thank you. It's unfortunate we have that many. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm afraid there are probably more too, but that's what's on the list for now.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
And so I think it's almost time for the next hearing, although I do have a few other things.
Okay, yeah, it's time. 7:45. We have notes in 10 West Beach Road, construction of a single family home, and it was continued from 9/11. So, do we have a DEP number for that one?
Yes, we do have a DEP number now. And their primary comment was, they were looking for delineation forms because it's on the pond. And, I don't know how you feel about this. In Webster, certainly we had most of our filings were along the lake, and a lot of times we just used the mean annual high water mark if there was no evidence of BVW. And in this case, there really is no evidence of BVW along the lake. So I'm fine with their submittal if you guys are fine with that. But that was DEP's comment on it.
Peter, are you working on this one?
Yes, I am. Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Like Mary said, I mean, there is no BVW. It's just the edge of the water, and so. I mean, I agree with her. That's why we filed it this way. It was just the high annual water line, and that's what we used for a 100-foot and a 200-foot off the pond.
Okay, comments from any other commission members?
I think Peter does have some updates to the plan as well.
Yes, I do.
But we've probably finished this discussion first.
This is Mike. I don't see any need for delineation forms.
Any comments from the audience? Okay, Peter, if you want to explain your other additions, please.
Okay, so since the last meeting, I reduced the disturbance within the 100-foot from the pond. Before it was roughly 3,600 square feet of disturbance, and we have squeezed that down to 1,200 square feet. And then I also put a temporary, like one of the commission members had requested, is if we did like a temporary area that we would let grow back because we needed to get those two well trucks in there. So I delineated an area of roughly 400 square feet of temporary disturbance. And then I added 4 bounds across the back on the 100-foot buffer. 2 are on the property line, and then we have 2 in the middle. And I went basically 5 feet off the back of the garage, as one of the commission members had mentioned that that's what he felt that would be fine. And that's basically the only change, reducing the disturbance, the 4 bounds, and then we were waiting for a DEP number.
Okay, do you have any questions from the commission? Any questions from Mary?
Yeah, I think he's, done pretty much what the commission has asked. I think maybe the only question is, and how the commission feels about the pathway to the dock, whether that's like a pathway through the woods or an open area. I don't feel strongly either way. Most of the area is preserved, but that's something the commission was talking a little bit about last time.
This is Mike. Could you maybe add a note, or maybe I missed, maybe there is one already, just the width of that path, 10 feet. 10 feet or whatever the commission thinks is reasonable. What do you think about that, Peter?
That's fine. If you guys want to let me know how wide. Right now it's shown as 8 feet.
Oh, okay. Is it? Where's it shown at? Am I just missing it?
Well, no. I mean, it's not labeled.
It's drawn as 8 feet.
It's drawn at it as 8 feet.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Well, 8 feet would be fine with me. I think that's plenty of room for them to establish a trail.
I think it's good to add a note that's 8 feet.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission, Mary, or the audience?
And I'll just make a note in the order of conditions that a permanent condition on this property is that, you know, that the path stays the way it is and it doesn't get wider, I think. Because the bounds reflect, you know, the edge, but I can make a note on that for the order.
Okay, perfect. So at this point, does anyone have any other questions? So Pierre, would you like to close your hearing?
Yes, I would, please.
Okay, for the commission, we have a person to motion to close this.
So moved.
A second?
Second,
Okay, let's do a voice vote. First, aye.
Tom, I.
Alan, I.
Mike, aye.
Marcella, I.
Those are all the commission members present. So we have a unanimous vote of the commission members present. So Mary will get in touch with you when the order of conditions is ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
You too. Thank you. Yeah. Mary, we have 9 minutes if you want to keep going.
Sure. I'll move on to 12 Plain Street next. So 12 Plain Street was the other letter we had written. I met with the homeowner on site, and he and I just want to show you kind of the background on this. So if we remember, we reviewed a septic for the neighboring property, and this flag had disappeared. Is the wetland goes in here, and so this is 12 Plain Street is right here, but he's also purchased this property right here, and he started maintaining it as lawn a few years ago when he purchased the property. So I met him on the site, and we did some augering. You know, this soil here definitely looks wet. This is about where the flag should have been, I figured. And so we talked about maybe he could potentially, you know, just mow, you know, not mow this area at all, potentially just mow this area. But if you look at I had forgotten when you look at these plans, when I had talking to him, I had forgotten about this lovely view on the plan though. The Mass Mapper actually has the wetland pretty much over the entirety of his, so here's 12, and this showing the wetland back here. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it would seem to be like that whole area that he's mowing was wet. I think that might be, the Mass Mapper might not be quite right, because this is, you know, it was definitely kind of spongy down here, but it's definitely higher over here, this area. So I had, you know, this is what we kind of, he was willing to do this to not mow this area right here. He would kind of like to put some blueberries in here. This is his yard. This part is actually very low here as well, but he's been maintaining this for years and years as mowed lawn. And I'm not sure exactly whether this is reflecting the property line or not, whether he'd been mowing over here before or not. He has blueberry bushes here that he kind of wants to encourage. He had a big pumpkin patch there. I think he's very amenable to working with us. So he's definitely willing to kind of keep this area, you know, not mowed. I had said he could probably continue mowing this area since it's not wet, but maybe we want him to pull back from there as well. And he doesn't have a computer at all. Otherwise he would probably be here. So. He's someone who seems to like to garden and take care of his yard. he really didn't want this area he thinks across the street looks really sloppy. And it's true, there are a few invasives in there, but he didn't want that to happen here. And there really aren't any invasives in here now. So I don't think there's a lot of danger of that. That was one of his concerns. The cattails have grown back nicely from when the whole thing was mowed several years ago.
Would it be a good idea to put in bounds where he can move to?
Yeah, we could do that. We could do bounds, or we could ask him to plant his blueberry bushes in a row along the edge of where he should mow or not. But bounds would be a good idea too.
Maybe putting bounds in and blueberry bushes. Because at some point, if someone wants to get rid of the blueberry bushes, the bounds would still be there.
Yeah, Chris, I don't, and maybe this is a question for the board. If the bounds were to go in, they might end up being closer than 30 feet to the edge of the wetland. Would you, I don't know whether, that's a question I have of whether you, because that's pretty typical, we put them 30 foot away. Whether we want to do that here. I mean, I'm curious if you, I don't know the board's history of putting bounds in more of a kind of enforcement situation where we don't have they're not before us for an application, but.
How far away do you think they would be, Mary?
I probably have to do a more careful analysis in here. Before he bought this property, none of this was being mowed. And, that's probably ideal if he doesn't mow any of this and then he can keep mowing. That would be the simplest. He can mow his yard. He did buy this property though, and kind of actually protect it. He's not planning on developing it. So he put some money down there. So yeah, maybe can encourage him to have blueberry bushes in the corner here.
This Mike, Mary, I like that idea, and your cursor's working, by the way.
Oh, is it working now? Good.
Yeah. But I do wonder, there's not a filing here.
Right.
So even if we asked for bounds, which would be an expense to the owner, I don't know if they really have any, any regulatory teeth to them, since there's no order conditions. There's not even RDA, right?
Yeah, and there's no, it hasn't been formally delineated either, so I feel a little uncomfortable putting bounds in that situation.
It's something that can be monitored by Nearmap.
Yes.
So if he's willing to stop mowing the area below your cursor,
yeah,
and plant some native blueberry bushes, or well, I don't know if he's going to native or.
I think he kind of wants cultivated.
That, that's okay. Birds eat those too. So, that would all be fine with me.
Yeah. Yeah, we scared him with the letter because he had this big pumpkin patch down here. He said, "I went and pulled out all my pumpkins." So, yeah, I think he's definitely workable, and I think some blueberry bushes in this, in this upper corner, and to not mow this area, I think that would be fine with him. I think his main goal was more appearances than anything else.
Does anyone else on the question have any comments? How about from the audience? Hearing none. I think, Mary, that's a good idea. Have him do the blueberry bushes and keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Okay. It is. By the time I'm done talking, it's 8 p.m. So I'm in Rosington for 93 Cart Road. And this is a continuation from 913. And Mary, did we have a DEP number for this one?
Yeah, so the DEP number just came in by the skin of our teeth at like 4:30 or 4:45 or something. DP, it is in, and so I didn't get a chance to email it to all of you. But it's in my email, so we can. There are a bunch of comments. John, maybe you've looked at it more carefully and you want to present the comments and see if you have.
So for the record, John Federico with Guerrier and Halnon. We did receive the DEP file number, and that is 3110812. As far as the comments go, they have here, North Pond may not qualify as a river, which in case would not apply for the Riverfront Act of 10.58. If the commission has determined the North Pond has riverine characteristics, then the project as proposed may be reviewable under the Riverfront Act, as this area of work proposed does not appear to be degraded. If considered degraded, it is lacking topsoil impervious area. The applicant should provide additional information on how the project complies with the Riverfront Act. And if not degraded, the applicant needs to demonstrate how the project meets the Riverfront Act, Section 4, subsection D. There's also a secondary comment on there saying that the existing dock and retaining walls require Chapter 29 licensing, if not already acquired, as North Pond is listed as a great. So that DEP number did come in at 4:30 today. In the short amount of time we had, we were able to get some information from the previous homeowner. And we do believe back in the 90s that the original dock that was in place, who knows how long ago before that, there was a repair that was done. And then they also included the steps to the pond and that short retaining wall along the pond edge in that filing. I don't have that exact information in front of me just yet, but it is something that we're looking into. Our intention is to keep the dock, so if we do have to file anything additional with DEP, we're more than happy to go through that process and get that taken care of there.
And I'm wondering if the confusion on the riverfront area is because under the Upton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, there's a 200-foot zone, which is basically riverfront area. And so you filled that out on the application, but the state's looking at it and going, well, that's not riverfront, that's a pond.
Yeah,
so
and
that's their comment.
and that was kind of the same issue that I had initially when looking at the site, because we weren't going to initially put in for the riverfront area, but where we saw it in the bylaws, I just at least wanted to be thorough with everything, have the alternatives analysis and some other stuff, just in case if it is something that would come up down the road later there. But with that being said, it seems like based on your report, Mary, and our discussion at the last meeting that it's not really leaning on that end. So if that's a kind of a moot point altogether, I do have a copy of the plan. I know I sent it to your email a little bit earlier today as well, with any of the revisions that were previously discussed. And then we also had a couple other minor updates in that as well.
Yeah, why don't you, do you want to pull that up? Or I think I think I do have your latest revision, but if you can pull it up if you want to show what's on.
Okay. So apologies here, just because the laptops might be a little harder to zoom for things. But as far as everything goes, the couple of comments that we did have previously were regarding the use of some sort of like a mulch sock or straw wattle. So I did have a detail added in for the mulch sock. The intention would be to kind of let the contractor determine where to use it in the best case situation. But in most typical applications, I have seen a mulch sock placed in front of a silt fence and then have both of those staked in. I just kind of left it as a generic note for erosion control, and we'll let them kind of make that call in the field. But we also did add in a stockpile area that is located outside of the 100-foot buffer. Part of it is where the stone retaining wall is. Since that wall is going to get taken down, that area should be suitable enough in size to have any additional materials or any additional erosion controls stacked up there. Again, as far as the house construction goes, it is mostly going to be modular and delivered. So we're not anticipating having too much of a stockpile on that end. In addition to that, we did add in some roof infiltration chambers to the north here, as well as to the south here. Essentially, we're proposing 4 total chambers at this time. Locations that we chose were just to make sure that we provide a minimum of a 25-foot separation off of the septic field. And then with the other one, we just wanted to make sure on the southern side that it was at a low enough level since we are competing with the hillside there. But outside of those 2 revisions, the final one that we had was we have extended the erosion control, and after some discussions with the client and wanting to make sure that we want to provide the most mitigation we can, we have decided ultimately that the shed that is existing right now, we are going to be removing that, as well as a good portion of the walkway, essentially up to where this erosion control line is. Our intention would be to have that restored back to grass, and then if we do have to add in through that area any bounds or anything. I know that was kind of briefly discussed at the last meeting. If we could just have that conditioned in or have a discussion on those locations, I can get that revision sent over to the town tomorrow.
Thank you. And Mary, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just going back to the dock permitting comments. I think the dock permits typically only last 15 to 20 years, so you probably need a new one anyway if it was back from the 90s or something like that. And the retaining wall would only need a permit if the bottom of the wall is below the mean annual high water mark. So I didn't look carefully at it. Right now, I was out there the other day, and the pond is very high right now, and the bottom of the wall is within the lake, but it may typically be, I don't know if it's typically within the lake.
We'll look into that, and if we do have to get anything on that wall portion permitted as well, we'll make sure that we get all that tied together. I don't know if that necessarily is anything directly related to the entire proposal that we have for the NOI. If it is, I'd like to just ask that as some sort of special condition. I do know that we are going to intend to get any sort of permits to either remove or keep the dock.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest that that it just be a part of the order of conditions that the proper permitting proceed through Chapter 91. And this is a very small wall. I don't know that the wall is very important, and I don't know if the wall permits are good forever or whether they need to be renewed as well. I know the dock permits need to be renewed.
I unfortunately only have one experience with a dock permit. It was a couple of years ago. So I'm definitely going to be over the next couple of days diving into those regulations a little bit more closely. And I do know, I think in that DEP email, they had a couple of contacts there if you need additional assistance. So I will be trying to speak to a DEP representative on that to make sure we address it all appropriately.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions from the applicants? Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I think the only thing outstanding is, if the commission would like to see bounds anywhere on this property. It is, as we know, previously disturbed. I think in my mind that the thing I really liked is there's some undisturbed shoreline, especially down where the shed was. There's a little undisturbed shoreline on the northern end too, but that area down where the shed was is just a really nice piece of undisturbed shoreline, which you could potentially put a bound, kind of delimiting the edge of that. But that's the only comment that I had, or maybe the commission, because it wouldn't be a really long line. It's not a huge area, but it's something we could also write into a continuing condition that the applicant to maintain. I think it's about, 5 to 10 feet that the applicant's to maintain that 5 to 10 feet of undisturbed shoreline.
the commission like to see it found?
Sure, I don't think it would do any harm, and it seems like that's a nice area to bring that kind of protection to.
John, would you be able to add a bound in the plan?
Sure. Would it be just the one bound in that case? Or would you need to have, multiple ones spaced out at all?
I guess it might make sense to do kind of one at the, perhaps two, one at either end. I don't think you'd need more than two, or
Okay.
just one kind of in the middle. Whatever.
I can do one in the location where my cursor is currently, and then we could have another one put up in this northern portion if that's acceptable to the commission. Or have possibly just two located on this southern side, and depending whichever way you want to go for that one.
That sounds good.
Okay. I'll make sure that that's reflected on the revised plan, and I'll have a stamped hard copy over to the office tomorrow morning for you folks.
Thank you. And so any other comments from the commission or Mary? Or the applicants? So, John and the applicants, would you like to close their hearing?
Yes, please.
Okay, for the commission, do we have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
okay, let's do a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Tom, I.
Alan, aye.
Mike, aye.
Marcella, I.
Okay, that's the unanimous vote of the commission. So Mary will get in touch with John and the applicants when the orders are ready. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you all so much. I do appreciate it. And Mary, as far as hard copies go, is it just two that you would need? Would you need any more?
Two is fine for plans. Yep, that's perfect.
Sure thing. All right, great. We'll make sure that we get that over to you tomorrow. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great, thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right. Okay, so we have 8 minutes. So Mary, anything else from your report?
Let's see. I think most of the other things are later on the agenda. Oh, except for, okay. There's two things. So this morning I met with Chris and Marcella and Mike and Joe with an update on Dogwood Drive situation there. And we discussed, and this is just an update. This will go on next meeting more formally on the agenda. So we discussed some options that we had discussed for the writers, kind of from, I think, Joe's perspective as looking at to what best from everyone. He thought it might be best to try and move the access easement further away from the writer's house, away from the rock, which is not in a good place, and just in a place that would not have the people walking so close to their yard. So there, as we did a site visit, we saw that there is currently a trail that's well defined between the railroad tracks and the cul-de-sac. That's through the woods. It's open. People are using it, and that trail seemed to be a reasonable place to provide access. The terrain is a little bit tricky around there because the subdivision, the cul-de-sac was built up. So if you put it anywhere else, you might having to be like move rocks or boulders or whatever to provide good access. And once you get down there, you would have to clear a trail kind of through some woods so that you're not in the railroad right of way. And the writers are willing to either put an opening in their fence or move their fence so that the trail would be behind the fence for the whole way. The writers are willing to have the pine trees, trimmed potentially by the DPW. They just didn't really want volunteers doing it. You know, someone who's had, you know, experience with pruning trees, willing to get the pine trees pruned so that people can walk through there. So that's one proposal that we talked about, that the writers were in favor of. I think from the town perspective, Joe thought if we could swing it financially, it's a win for everybody because it brings the path further away from the writer's house, which is good for the public and good for the writers. So that's one alternative. I think the concern with that is it could be expensive. Something else that came up within conversations with the writers is they are willing to, you know, work with the current configuration, which has, you know, the problem with the stone and has people, you know, walking right next to the fence, you know, and that would involve pruning the pine trees. And they were willing to allow the board to put up much better signage, you know, several signs on the fence and a sign, you know, showing where the access is. They're okay with that. So that's something we talked about, although I think Joe would really kind of, I don't know, Chris and Marcella, you can add to that, but just would really like to see the trail moved away from where it is just because of the difficulties. So the questions were funding. Joe thought maybe it could be a CPC project. I don't know. And that Mike and I are supposed to look into getting an estimate from a surveyor just to see what the cost would be for that portion of it. So this is just kind of an update. You know, Marcella and Christine, if you have anything to add, you can add it. But I think if we want, it will go on next meeting's agenda for more discussion.
I think that was a good point, Mary, that this will be on the next agenda as an item. So that way it will be a public notice.
Mary Mary and Grace, for the minutes, when you mentioned Mike, that was Michael Antonellis, not me.
Yes.
So
Yep.
could you make sure that's in the minutes? Thanks. And thank you for the update.
Yep. The other thing that came up that didn't make it on the agenda, this is also coming from Mike Antonellis and I believe it's the Housing Advisory Board, and we've heard this before. They're very interested in the Pleasant Woods property for a potential affordable housing development. I did have a pretty long talk with Mike Antonellis today, and they know that they'd have to access it from Warren Street. And so I said that even the Warren Street access, you know, it's kind of, we looked at the contours and how it's kind of difficult, and especially Warren Street, the Warren Street connection with High Street is kind of a dangerous intersection, brought that up to him. But at any rate, they're still, I think, interested. And so they want the board to consider whether they'd be willing to do a swap. So this, again, is something going on the October 13th agenda. So you can kind of keep that in the back of your head. A swap with another piece of land.
Is there any other piece of land on the table? I can't think of any parcel that would, I mean, this is a lovely parcel of land that really
I know.
deserves protection.
Yeah, no, I think Mike thought, I think they're thinking Stephens, which doesn't really make sense to me, or some other town property that's landlocked near Stephens. So I'm not really understanding. And I do think, though, that they would not want to use the whole property. They would only want to use a portion of it. So maybe it ends up being subdivided and the rear portion of it, or the steeper portion, is still preserved. But it's open for discussion.
I have reason to believe that none of these people have walked the property.
Yes.
Because if they walk it, they will see the challenges immediately. It's a very tough area to develop. I don't know why they're even considering it if they've walked it.
Yeah, and actually I did tell Mike that, and he would like to do a site visit with that board. And if there's any Concom members willing to join them, I think that would be helpful too. Yeah, I was trying to dissuade him from, yeah.
I have 2 points, Mary. One is there are vernal pools on that property that they need to be aware of. And the second one is a possible swap could be for the Forest Heights on North Street.
I didn't get your second point there, Chris. What was the second point?
Will swap could be for Forest Heights on North Street.
Forest Heights on North Street.
Because the town owns that, because it was foreclosed on, so the town has ownership of it.
Oh, that's the one that they're proposing. You know that?
For what?
You think that's the one that they had in mind, was that property?
No, that's what I think they should have in mind.
That's what they should do. Okay.
They haven't talked about it at all.
Mary, are they going to have like a sketch to show us a couple of weeks? You know, even if it's hand drawn, just, you know, where the development footprint might go, or are they not even remotely ready for that?
I'm not sure that they are. I think maybe we better get them on a site visit first.
The other thing we should do is make a note to make sure we visit those vernal pools in the spring and certify them if they're certifiable. I think at least one or two are, but we need to collect the data.
Yeah. Yeah, I did tell Mike Antonellis that there were potentially vernal pools there as well.
Is there anything else on this topic? It has an 8:20, which is our discussion about 343 McCann Street for enforcement order.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he's going to be on. I reached out to him twice. He did call back and leave me a message, but I was not in the office when he called.
Do you want to describe it, Mary?
Well, I don't think there's really much of an update since last week. I did talk about it last week. I just need to try to get him on the phone so he can talk to us. So.
Okay, perfect. So anything else, Mary, from your list?
I don't think so. I think there's a few things on the agenda, but we'll get to those later.
Okay, great. So how about your items for the administrative report?
We have one set of minutes to approve from September 13th.
Does anyone have any comments on those minutes? If not, do we have a motion to accept the minutes of September 13th?
So moved.
Here's a second.
Second,
Okay, let's do a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Aye.
Alan, aye.
Mike, aye.
Marcella, aye.
Okay, that's a unanimous vote of the commission members present.
And then we have one expenditure to approve. A Gatehouse Media invoice came in for $135.34.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept this expense?
So moved.
Second.
It's a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Tom, aye.
Alan, aye.
Marcella, aye.
Mike, aye.
Okay, unanimous vote of the commission.
And here is our balance sheet.
Does anyone have questions about our balance sheet.
Yeah, this is Bill. The obligation here says Gatehouse Media 20228, which was the total on the voucher, but the invoice itself was listed as 135.34.
Yeah, Amy and Mary and I realized this afternoon that the total amount due is at 135. It just wasn't reflected here.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions. Okay, Grace.
And then lastly, a brief website update. The new website is finally going live on Friday.
Perfect. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, so
I'd like to make a comment on the website. And Grace has done a really nice job with working on it. And when you go in there and look at on the new website, I don't know if you guys ever use the website to look at applications under review, because most of the information that's on the Google Drive is also on the website for the public to look at. But when you go in there, you'll be able to see, and I think this will be easier in general. And everything going forward, all the applications, the plans will still be up there. You'll be able to reference that. And I think if you guys think it's a good idea, we'll try to put the orders up there as well. So you guys can, if you think, oh, what was going on for that property? It'll just be on the website and you guys can access it through, we'll have to maybe show you how, but it's through the document center. Everything will be done by street name. So if you have a question about a property, and I think that'll be helpful in the future. So, I mean, I know you guys can find stuff on the Google Drive, but it's kind of organized by meeting and it's a little hard to find there. So,
does anyone have questions or comments? Okay, nice job, Mary and Grace. So, if you keep moving forward with that as you described, that would be great. And how about Mary? Open Space Committee.
I don't have anything for this evening.
Okay. How about Land Stewardship?
We're still working on figuring things out over at the Mechanic Street property. We have been looking at the potential parking area off of Mechanic Street and had a couple of site visits there. So we've identified an area that could work and identified a place where we could access it with minimal impact to a wetland. And now we need to work out the details with SVT, and still working on the CR. I believe it was part of the packet. I personally haven't had an opportunity to read all the way through it, so I like to encourage everyone to read it, give feedback, and maybe we can discuss it further next meeting. So I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on that, but that is where we're at.
Thank you. Okay.
Hey, Marcella, about the CR, there are a couple things maybe we could talk about now.
Sure.
And then I'm wondering if, well, first off, I don't know if it was only my ability to access the packet, but there was only like one page in the packet, and I emailed the entire document late in the afternoon. But I'm wondering if we can just kind of go through this a little bit, and if if we can get it back to SVT, just so a certain staffer at SVT kind of gets off our back. But they've been kind of pushing for this, and
we've been kind of dragging on this, so
yeah,
we're at opposite ends here. But what did you feel needed to be addressed?
Well, if we can get to the keep going
down.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. When I tried to access it, I could only see one page. Anyway, okay. One thing, keep going down, it's under 12, I think. Yeah. Question for the commission, should we allow foraging? Like for, mushrooms, blueberries, that kind of thing.
We do on our other properties.
Yeah, I think we should allow it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we can add that. And then the other question, actually, it's here too, is e-bikes, or maybe it's not here. Actually, it's number 11. It might be under e-bikes. Marcella, do you have specific thoughts
I
on
know that land stewardship, it's under discussion at this point. We don't really have a policy about them. We need to figure that out. SVT might have a policy about them. I'm not sure they do, but they may have something to contribute there. But
sorry.
What's that?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
What is the issue with an e-bike? I mean, what's the difference? Like, I don't see the difference between that and the mountain bikes. It's just one has the option to use a form of power to get it through, but it's still the bike, the tires, what have you. If we allow mountain bikes, I don't know what the issue would be with an e-bike.
That's the question. So we're trying to work that out. We have had complaints about someone using an e-bike and going very fast on the trails, and that not only is that dangerous, but it does affect the trails. But that's a mountain biker can go 20 miles an hour too. So that really is but I think we might want to consider like speed limits, which could apply to any vehicles, including those that might be used by those with limited physical abilities, and they would be allowed to use a vehicle, but again, we wouldn't want to have vehicles going at great speeds for a variety of reasons. So it's under discussion.
We could add it here and then still regulate it. In the regulations for the property.
Yeah, and actually, just to jump back to the issue of foraging. There's guidelines to foraging to make sure you don't overharvest something, or so there's like these nuances to both these questions that do we want to spell every little detail out about what kinds of bikes are allowed, to what amount, how many mushrooms can you pick in a day, that you can allow something but still have it be abused and taken advantage of if somebody doesn't have some guidelines.
Well, I think the controlling document would be the regulations, and we could be more protective. This is, CR is more general. It's just basically, are we allowing foraging or not? Or are we allowing, this 12, maybe we should say, if people want to add foraging, maybe we should also add mountain bikes and e-bikes, just to cover ourselves. And then just because the CR says they're allowed the activities allowed doesn't mean it would, that would transfer to the regulations.
Well, I don't want it to be confusing to the public, as far like having different rules for different properties and different different approaches. I know that SVT probably has certain conditions they'd like to put on the property as well, and I just would like to see it be as consistent with the rest of our properties and that the regulations would apply equally, just in part for convenience sake, but also for the, it's easier for the public to get a grip on it if we just have a consistent policy throughout the different properties in town. Just my thought.
Okay. So, well, Marcel, let me know if this isn't consistent, but I can withdraw this motion to it, but I would make a motion that we amend section B12 to include foraging, mountain bikes, and e-bikes. That would be my motion.
The second.
Second.
Let's do a voice vote. Chris,
Yeah, I still want to think about it. But yeah, if you all want to vote, go right ahead.
Tom, I.
Chris, I.
Mike, I guess, but I am a little concerned. Maybe we should respect Marcelo's thoughts on this.
Should we wait to vote later?
Well, Mike, did you want to vote so that we have something to go back to SVT with that we can go back and forth
like
on?
to like make any changes or no changes and just get it back to SVT like tonight.
Because I can see, not having read the entire document, I can imagine that there's other places we might want to tweak things. And
okay.
I don't know if it's easier to just do all the tweaking at once and hand them a document that feels ready for us, or if we want to go through it piecemeal and just have discussions, for each.
If that's the case, why don't we just put it on the agenda for 2 weeks from now?
Yeah. And at that point, I can comment on it with a little bit more knowledge about what's on there. And I don't know if anybody else wants to take a closer look at it, but that I would recommend that we do put it off for a couple of weeks. So I don't know if you want to withdraw the vote or if you want to go ahead and
I'll withdraw the motion if that's possible. Yeah.
Withdraw the motion. And do we have any comments from the audience?
This is Bill. I actually think it would be helpful to understand how the rest of our restrictions deal with electric bicycles. I think most of them probably say the right to use motorized vehicles is limited, if not all of them, the existing ones. Just to be I think Marcel is right. We just need to understand how our restrictions differ and try to keep them as consistent as possible, if possible. And the other thing is with the e-bike, I mean, that's definitely a motorized bike, and a dirt bike is effectively a bike with a motor. But we draw a distinction there. So I think we need to think through the e-bike issue. And there are different types that have different kinds of motors and different speeds and so on.
All right. Yeah,
I would just add one thing. In terms of conservation restrictions, my experience, they are evolving. There are things that are in this one that, never occurred to anybody, 10, 12 years ago, say for Sweetmoon Farm or for some other CR someplace else.
No, 10 years ago, we didn't know that e-bikes would be an issue.
Yeah.
10 years now it might be hovercrafts,
Exactly. But it's the CRs are really evolving documents. Amazing to go back, even if you go back 20 years, it's like, really? That's that's what the motto was. But much of this, but not all of it is based on an April 2023 model that the state has. It's been tweaked quite a bit, but a lot of it is wording is pretty close to what that model is. But
Mike, if you want to go back to SVT with some, just saying that we've been discussing this, and if they have any thoughts or any policies or any, any experience with e-bikes or other, or the foraging issue, it would, we could at least keep a dialogue open until next meeting and get feedback if that's something you think might be useful for us. And let us, in our subtle way, let SVT know that we are working on this and that there's a lot of thought going into it. Just, it's slow.
Well, should I send them this draft with the understanding that it's not approved by the commission and additional comments, changes are expected, something like that? Or
Yeah,
not send them the draft, or not send them the draft at all?
Well, if they really want something, yeah, we could send them the draft, but I just as soon send them a document that we've given our full attention to. So,
okay.
That's just my thinking. But let's hold off until next meeting, and we can let the folks at SVT know that it's.
What about sending the document and getting feedback from SVT? Let it, like you said, it's not a done deal on the document, but wouldn't it be good to have their feedback while we have when we have our next meeting to discuss it? I think it would be good to have their feedback while we're discussing this.
It might also not hurt to have a Zoom meeting and a conversation, and we could, hash some of this stuff out in a conversation rather than doing back and forth stuff on
Could
paper.
invite them to the next meeting.
Yeah. But I welcome any kind of feedback or thinking around these issues. I mean, they're fairly experienced with land use and land protection, and they may have something valuable to offer in this conversation. So if they want to talk, I'm happy to talk. So.
Well, I'm still unclear what the consensus is. Should we send them this and invite them to the next meeting? Make it clear that this is still this draft is still under discussion, not approved, or I don't know. I'm just asking. I could go either way. I just want to know what
Yeah, I mean, both approaches have their merits, but I'm inclined to work on it and hand them something that they can then give us feedback on that we've had some thinking about. So I would hold off.
I would as well.
Okay.
Do any other comments? Okay, so we'll hold off on this discussion and anything else for Lawrence Stewardship.
That's what we've been focusing on, a little bit of trail work here and there, but that's we're still having I'm still having conversations with Vistra and NEMBA about working on that bridge at Warren Brook, and we do have something for the warrant to get CPC funding, and Vistra has agreed to contribute $3,000 toward the project if it goes forward, and NEMBA has also committed $750. So we may have to dip into some of our own funds to make up the balance, but that still is dependent on getting a positive vote at the town meeting.
So, Mary, anything other discussion items?
Yeah. So last meeting, I showed pictures of what was going on at Sylvan Springs, and it was not on the agenda though. So there had been, if you remember correctly, they had, kind of commenced work without notifying us, and some issues with erosion, and they have done a wonderful job of cleaning it up. What still remains to be done is the wetland needs to be flagged, and potentially they need to clean some stuff up out of the wetland. And it seemed like, since it was in my mind, it was a big enough instance that maybe it needed a formal enforcement order. They have cleaned most of it up, but just to as a way to have a paper trail for this instance. And you don't have to do that, but I think it might be appropriate here. And just to give a little teeth to remind them to make sure they get the wetland delineated. So if they need to clean out, and I think they do, I think there was sedimentation into the wetland that needs to be cleaned out.
Any other questions or comments here? I agree, Mary, that they should get an official enforcement order. Any other comments? Do we need a vote, Mary?
Yes, I think, we should vote on that.
The motion to vote on the enforcement order for Sylvan Springs.
So moved.
Second. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, let's do a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Tom, aye.
Alan, aye.
Micah,
Marcella, aye.
Okay, that's a unanimous vote of the commission.
The next of the discussion items, I don't know whether Mike or Marcella, do you want to say anything else about the Mechanic Street trail planning and wetland crossings?
I think that we've said what we've been up to, so I think we're good.
Okay. And then, so the next piece is town's right of first refusal for the Kelly Farm. And I don't know whether you guys looked at, I'll put their letter up here. So the Kellys are basically pulling a house lot off of a bigger lot, so that that is in, I believe it's under 61A. I'm not sure the precise language there. So it's under agricultural restriction with the assessors board. So since they're pulling it out of this, the town has the opportunity to buy it. And they want to vote from our board as to whether or not we recommend that. And let me just pull it up on Mass Mapper as to where it is. This is on East Street. Near the power lines, if you're familiar with that area. Whoops.
Does this abut anything at Peppercorn, for example, or?
No, I'm not sure, but I think it's this parcel right here. You can see.
Yeah, it's either that or the other side, but I think you're right. I think it's the southerly portion of that parcel.
Yeah, and it's on the west side of the road. I'm pretty sure on that.
It is on the west side of the road. It doesn't apply to anything at Peppercorn.
Okay.
Yeah. So at this point, they're telling us that they intend to sell it for residential development for a house lot. They don't have an offer, so there is no number on the table at this point. So the only decision the Conservation Commission can make is that, regardless of how much it might cost, we're not interested in it. If you're waiting until they have a number, either we'll have to wait until they get an offer, or we'll have to go through an appraisal process. But it's about 2 acres out of a parcel, which I think is roughly 20 acres. And as you can see, is at this point is fully almost fully used for agricultural purposes.
So is there anything on this land that is of conservation interest or value that we should be looking at?
Well, the whole parcel might be of some interest. I think some small part of it is probably not so I guess one reason we'd do it is because we'd eventually buy the whole parcel. But yeah, that's not what's on the table right now.
Yeah, there is just a small wetland there.
Well, it doesn't seem like we can do much of anything unless we have a number, and it doesn't strike me as a parcel that we would, put money into to get an appraisal. But I could be wrong. There could be something awesome there.
Does anyone else have comments about this?
Well, I have a question. We have the letter from them, but that's not, there are rules for how someone is supposed to request to take land out of Chapter 61, and I don't think that letter really, totally, follows those rules or meets the requirements. That's one thing, but the other thing, even if we had a letter or a document that met all the requirements, I would recommend we pass on this parcel in terms of trying to connect potential acquisition. So that'd be my thought. But you might, if that's what the commission feels, Mary, somebody might want to let the Kellys know that they need to, hire an attorney who knows the process, who can formally, go through the process.
We've had that discussion, the principal and assessor and I, and it doesn't look right, but I think as long as they've told us they intend to convert and they have notified all the appropriate parties, that probably is pretty close to satisfying, if not satisfies all the requirements.
But the letter the reason I was asking is that, Mary, can you go back to the letter?
Yeah.
So it says assessor, board of selectmen. It doesn't say planning board. It doesn't say conservation commission.
Yeah, no, I think the letter has been provided to all the boards.
Okay.
That are normally required.
Yeah.
So they made the notice to all the appropriate parties as far as I know, but I did have that conversation with the principal assessor and she passed that information along. I know the planning board discussed it last night.
Okay.
It was on their agenda for last night. I believe it's been put on the agenda for the board of selectmen as well. So I think they're effectively there in terms of proper notice. I don't know what they've sent to the state though.
Okay. Well, that's the case. I'd make a motion that we pass on an opportunity. The Conservation Commission recommends the town pass on an opportunity to acquire this 2.03 acre parcel.
A second.
Second.
Let's do a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Tom, aye.
Alan, aye.
Marcella, aye.
Mike, aye.
Unanimous vote of the commission. And how about 52 Elm Street?
Yeah, we covered already 52 Elm and 12 Plain Street. I think up next is the MVP program. Mike, did you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting kind of late, but I just want to run something by the commission. The Municipal Vulnerabilities Program, which Upton went through the planning process probably almost 2 years, a year and a half ago now. And since then, pretty much the town's been pretty quiet. I think there was possibly one, what's called an action grant application. Once you're through the planning process, you're eligible to apply for action grants, and many towns have done that and received them. There's, all sorts of different projects that potentially, could be funded, from land acquisition to culvert surveys, dam removals, all sorts of things. But anyway, the town has been kind of just dead in the water for at least a year. The next action grant application round will be like in the middle of 2024. I think it might be due in March or April, maybe. I'm not sure. The request for proposals isn't out yet. But I think now would be the time to kind of re-energize the program. And what I was thinking about doing would kind of similar to what we did for the Lakes and Ponds Committee is prepare a letter to the Board of Selectmen recommending that a MVP committee be established that would assist town staff in moving this program forward. There are a fair number of towns have MVP committees. Many of them are entirely staffed by paid staff. There are a few that are volunteer committees, and there are others that are hybrid committees where there's both paid staff or representatives of paid staff and volunteers. And I think we could, if we want to send this request to selectmen, we could let them know there's different options how the committee could be structured. But I'm just afraid if if a committee or a working group or something isn't formed, we're not going to do very well in terms of coming up with action grant proposals. And also, actually, one of the criteria when the state is reviewing these proposals is that, do you have an active program? And we really don't right now. So we would lose some review points just because of that, I think. Anyway, so that's what I was thinking. If there's anyone wants to make a motion, or if there's no objections, I'll try to write up a something like a mission statement with some thoughts about how to form a committee that the commission could vote on next month or next meeting. Any comments on that?
Yeah, this is Bill. I want to highlight the fact that one of the things that we need to do to be eligible for the action grant is to complete an annual report, I think by Friday. And one of the issues is that no one owns it at this point, and that just simply reinforces Mike's message that we need to find somebody or organization, commission or whatever committee to lead this, because otherwise it won't get done and we won't be able to take advantage of the action grants. And they can be used for a whole host of things that may benefit any one of a number of organizations within the municipality. So, but we do need to get the report completed by the end of the week, Mike.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to do. Is town planner going to do that, or should we just take it on ourselves to try to?
Well, I think you probably need to talk to Mike Antonellis about his interest in being involved or leading.
Yeah,
because I think in many communities it's the planning organization that handles this. And I think when we did the work before, the project lead was Paul Dell'Aquila.
That's right. What actually happened there was we were partway through the planning grant when Paul was hired.
Yep.
It was kind of Derek and me, and pretty much did the action grant application, the planning grant application. And then Paul came on board and kind of took it over. And since he's left, this really hasn't been any activity that I know of, and I think we probably missed, filing a yearly report last year if one was requested. I don't know of a report that was filed last year by the town. So, Bill, maybe you and me can get with Mike and try to get something submitted by the end of the week, which is like 2 days.
Yeah, I started filling it out this afternoon.
Okay, super.
It's not a huge burden. In fact, since we really didn't do anything, their questions are mostly not applicable.
Yeah.
The answers are rather.
Maybe you could put in there that the Conservation Commission is considering
yes,
requesting the selectmen form a committee, something like that.
Well, if you take the vote now and formally agree that you're going to do that, then I can say considering they are.
That sounds stronger.
Let's take a vote to have Bill and Mike work on the letter for the MVP program.
So moved.
Second.
And
Hey, let's do voice vote. Chris, I.
Tom, I.
Alan, aye.
Marcella, I.
Mike, with a, well, yeah, that's one thing, but but the other is, Bill, is this what you want it to say? Do you want us to, the motion say that we?
No, actually, I think the ideal motion is the Conservation Commission voted to propose to the Board of Selectmen that a MVP committee be created.
Okay. So a friendly, Chris, I would ask for a friendly amendment to your motion to reflect what Bill just said.
I second that.
Second.
Vote I.
Tom, I.
Alan, aye.
Mike, aye.
Marcella, I.
That's a unanimous vote of the commission to accept the friendly amendment to the request of a letter say for the MVP program to the selectmen. And Mary, we have a 0 Main Street 40B comment letter.
And I feel like some of our people in the audience might be here for that, and I'm sorry we left it till the end. Yeah, I just had this on here just to let the commission know that I will be preparing a comment letter, and I think we will have. I think they have asked that we get it done by the 11th, so that is before our next meeting. I will send it around to you all, and just wanted to see if. Not that anyone's had a chance to think about it much, but if anyone had any specific things they wanted me to look at, I know we have some members of the public that I don't know whether you have all gotten the emails that have been, they have some thoughts, and I will certainly look at their thoughts, and I will look at the plans and make comments based on the plans, and I believe that we will still have an opportunity to review it through conservation through a notice of intent filing. That is required under the state law, I believe. I was talking about that with Mike Antonellis today, and he believes that while they have, they're exempt from local bylaws, they still have to follow state wetland regs, so they would still have to file notice of intent with us.
Okay, do we have any comments from members of the commission? Any comments from the community? Please state your name and your address for a minute.
Yes. My name is Craig Winefuss, and I'm at 8 Hazeltine Road, Upton, Mass. I just wanted to thank the Conservation Commission for giving me the opportunity to speak about the proposed development at 57 Main Street. And I just wanted to say many of my neighbors and myself are very concerned about a lot of the aspects of this development that's proposed by the Lobriser Construction Corporation. The building is planned to be 5 stories in height. And one of the concerns is it's not really going to match the existing houses and the residential neighborhoods that are currently in place in this area. So one of our concerns, just for Upton in general, is that this building will kind of set a precedent for very large urbanized buildings in the town. My understanding is that only about 25% of this building will actually be affordable housing. So unfortunately, it won't be close to achieving the 10% affordable housing mandate from the state. So that's concerning to me a little bit, because once we kind of set this precedent for a 5-story apartment building in the middle of town, we could, because we're not meeting that 10% mandate from the state, we could end up seeing, I would believe, other 5-story buildings cropping up around town to meet, to continue to meet that 10% mandate. So it'd be nice if it was just one and done, and that was all we were going to see in town. But my concern is if we set this precedent, we might start seeing a bunch of these pop up, which would kind of change the look and feel of the town and the atmosphere of the town to a more urbanized kind of a setting. And another concern that a lot of my neighbors and myself have is that this particular location that Lobriser has chosen to build is especially concerning because we're going to lose a lot of the wetlands in this area. So the wetlands are, I've been discussing this a lot with my neighbors, and these wetlands are particularly critical for this area because there's a lot of drainage from the developments of Whitney and Hazeltine that kind of drain into this one location. It's kind of on a hill, so all of the water kind of drains right into this wetland area. So one of our major concerns is if we displace the wetlands, it's going to cause a lot of further flooding in basements in the houses surrounding this area, and a lot of the neighbors already have issues with flooding already. So we're concerned that this will increase it dramatically. The proposal essentially is clear cutting all of the trees that are in this existing forest. So if we do that, we're going to be losing a lot of these trees that consume a lot of the water that that accumulates in this wetland area here. So a major concern is, where will this water go? There's neighbors in the area who already have flooding in the basement, as I had mentioned. So there's going to be further water drainage problems. And I had spoke to a neighbor named Mr. Hart on Pleasant Street, and he actually kind of receives the culmination of all this wetland water into his property. And he actually has the water flows from this wetland area underneath 140 into the Kevin McLaughlin property, who has a wetland on his property, and then it kind of consolidates on Kevin's property, and then it flows into Mr. Hart's property into an actual stream, and the stream flows through his property year round, which kind of indicates that it's probably sourced from a spring because it's always flowing constantly. The Lobriser report does discuss the wetlands a little bit, but we kind of have concerns about the report and that the wetlands might not have been thoroughly evaluated in appropriate manner. So we were kind of wondering if the Conservation Commission might be able to suggest a way of possibly having another survey done by like an independent third party. I'm not a specialist in this area, so I don't really thoroughly understand, these types of surveys. So that was one area that we were kind of interested in in discussing further with the Conservation Commission. And we also had questions about a lot of the stone walls that are existing on this property. I know that some of these stone walls tend to have archaeological significance to the Native American population that was originally inhabiting the town. And I know the Governor's Landing development, there was concerns about removing stone walls from that area. So I would that's another area of concern. I would ideally, before this area is developed, I would ideally like to have at least an initial survey from someone knowledgeable in archaeology to look at the stone walls and just make sure that we're not losing some sort of archaeological heritage. I know, as we all know, there is significant Native American presence in town with the Heritage Park cave and other stone walls up on Governor's Landing and Pratt Hill and other places. So I just want to make sure that we're not losing anything of value in archaeological sense. So that's all I had. I would just ask, as you had already stated this, that the Conservation Commission will be reviewing that report and submitting any comments that you guys have to the Board of Selectmen by the deadline of October 11th, which would be fantastic. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate the commission's assistance with reviewing this report and submitting any concerns that you might have to the Board of Selectmen. So I just wanted to thank you all for listening to me. I know it's late, so I just wanted to provide those comments concerning the report. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Craig. We definitely appreciate your comments. We'll look into what you stated. Do we have other comments from the audience?
This is Marcia Kathleen. If I could have a minute.
Yes.
To add to that, we're really concerned about the drinking water in town. For a little history, we've been told that when they built Memorial School years ago and they put shovels in the ground, the area flooded because of the underground water in this area. People who grew up here and played in the Whitney Lane, Hazeltine area before it was built said there were streams here that had to have been buried when they built our neighborhood. And we see consistent flooding, sinkholes. And when they built Laurel Lane, and they did the development there, we noticed things like changes and new sinkholes coming up, more issues with flooding. So we're really concerned because when they clear cut the trees and take away the brush on the Whitney Hazeltine area, we're going to have issues because that acts as a natural filter for everything coming down from our area. And it's flowing down toward the 2 pumping stations and 4 wells that's within 2 miles of this area. So the contaminants will be flowing down and they'll be added to by the asphalt contamination, the road chemicals, the lawn chemicals, the dog park. So even if the pumping station can clean up the water for town water, there's people around us with private wells, and water flows underground and the contaminants will flow underground, and we're concerned about our neighbors. The other thing I would say is when they built Laurel Lane, there was a lot of wildlife displaced and they've come our way. And this is their last little sanctuary over here. And if the wetlands isn't cleaning the water, the remaining wetlands, if it becomes contaminated, all of the wildlife there will die if that wetlands area is contaminated. At the entrance, which is small on Main Street, there's wetlands there. There's wetlands that looks like it will surround the road. We're trying to figure out when they build, how are they going to get equipment in without destroying the wetlands that are there? And one other question that I have for you is, in the area where they're going to put drainage pipes, they said they would restore the wetlands. What does that mean? Does that mean they can move them, or does that mean they have to restore them in place? Thank you. I appreciate your time and your attention.
Thank you. We appreciate that, Marcia. And Mary, do you want to speak to the topic of restoring wetlands?
Certainly, yeah. I have seen the plans and the proposed restoration areas. So, yeah, I think they'll be putting a pipe in, I believe. So it would be a temporary disturbance involving, taking some soil out, putting a pipe in, and then putting the soil back. I think we would need to look. So they usually, for this type of thing, we ask them to avoid cutting trees down. And sometimes if there's shrubs that are in the way, they need to dig them up and, plant them back in again. Usually this type of disturbance would be quick. It would take a day or two and they would restore it. But yeah, this is restored in place. The pipe, ends up being underground and the wetland is restored. Yeah, is something the commission would look into for sure.
Thank you, Mary. And do we have other comments from the audience?
Yes, this is Rick McGuire, 11 Whitney Lane. I was talking with some of our octogenarian senior citizens and some even older than that. And they were telling me that in the history of Upton, that probably around the turn of the century, 1900 that is, for decades, this land behind us was always flowing downhill. So the land was used by some of our early settlers as a cranberry bog. And I've also been told by many of the folks that was collecting water. And why was it there? Because it was a strategic location. By that, I mean the top of the hill is at High Street and Warren, and the water flows down there. So we've had a problem over the years of water accumulating behind the houses on Fisk, behind the houses in Hazeltine. Water, as Marcia and some of the other speakers have said, that is flowing downhill. My concern is when we saw the original plans for this building concept, they had the road coming in and it was almost 10 feet from the property lines on Whitney. And what we have asked for, and we'd like you to seriously consider, is maybe 30 or 40 feet of buffer space. And that buffer space would have potentially some trees that are the 15 or 20 foot variety, because right on the property lines now, we have trees that are 60 to 70 feet tall, and they are helping us eliminate what would potentially be noise pollution, light pollution. And we're hoping we can get a buffer zone and keep those trees. The other thing is, because of this topology that we have, the water has been flowing downhill for years. And what I like to see in that border, when the people put together their stormwater plan, they put stormwater holding pools in there, but that was for the water that was on their property per se. But the water has been flowing downhill. We see water, if you go stand near the culverts, there's water flowing virtually all the time. We'd like to see some swales put in so that we can drain the water that's coming from the top of the hill on High Street and Warren down and bring the swale so we take it down into the wetlands. Right now, behind my house, 11 Whitney Lane, we have wetlands. I think it's 51 high, which is the former Doug Kenniston property. They're even wetter. We have water back there. Last year in August, when we had drought conditions, walked back there and tried to stand on what looked like firm ground and sunk up to my ankles. And it was just like a bog back there. And there's standing water. We do have Boston fern growing, the skunk cabbage, and that water is flowing downhill. It's about a 30-foot difference in altitude flowing downhill. The water is there, it's flowing downhill. When they put the road in, the concern is of many people that we have culverts in there to take care of the water. Otherwise, we created a dam that's going to back up water and create a deeper water collection area behind 11 Whitney Lane, 13, and over on Main Street. And we've got to take account into the water, and that's my request. And thank you for listening to us, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rick, for pointing those things out so we can look into that as well. And other people in the audience.
Hi, this is Pat Hurley, 13 Whitney Lane. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the time. And like everyone has said, we appreciate a chance to tell our side and what we've seen. I've lived here like a lot of people for almost 40 years. When we bought the property, we were told that nothing could be built back there because it was wetlands. Okay, I guess I was wrong. But I'm really concerned about the road. And some colleagues of mine have tried to take a look at what the state records are for the wetlands. And when we've tried to map them on the proposed development, we see some discrepancies. So my question to the Conservation Commission is, which map of the wetlands is currently the right one?
Oh, I can answer, and this is something that came up earlier. So the wetlands on this property have been reviewed by our former agent. There was a filing, I believe, over a year ago, an order of resource area delineation, which confirms the wetland boundaries. Our former agent did review the site and confirmed the boundaries, and that's good for 3 years. So those are the boundaries that we are going to use for this project. And if you want to look at those plans, they're at our office, and I might be able to, but we could potentially put that up on the website for you guys.
But I'd appreciate it if we could see how those things actually map against those. I'm not quite sure what Lobuser used when they submitted.
He would have had to use the line that was approved by our former agent. That's what he has to use.
Okay. If we could see that, if we could see that map, I would really love to see it.
Yeah, we can. What we'll do is we'll under our applications under review, we'll make a folder for that, and we can put that plan on the website.
Thank you very much. So what your point is that we cannot get another ORAD done until 3 years are up from the last one?
Yeah, the line is good for 3 years. There was an appeal period, but that's already passed. Yeah, so the line is good for 3 years. Now, it probably has already been a year and a half. I could look into the date on that. But yeah, the line's good for now.
Okay. The other comment I would make is the road barely fits through there. It's right up against the 30-foot marker and exceeds it in some places. When they're doing the construction, the damage to the wetlands is going to be huge. I mean, this is to me very obvious. When they do the blasting, we're going to lose more trees. Trees are blowing over in those wetlands right now. If you walk through there, like you probably have, and I have, trees are blowing over in fairly normal breezes. The root structure is about a diameter of 6 feet. We're going to lose all the trees. If they think they're going to rebuild the wetlands, they're not going to rebuild it as a treed wetland. at least not for a few generations. And I'm sorry for the anger in my voice, but this is a pretty contentious. It'll wreck the town of Upton. So anything we can do to stop them from going through the wetlands and bringing havoc, as everyone else has said, we would greatly appreciate your help at doing that. Thank you. Thank you for listening and hearing me vent. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome. We will take that into consideration and we'll review what we have on file. Do we have other comments?
Yeah, I just have a comment and I haven't looked. I know they've submitted an updated plan, which is what I will be looking at. And I'm afraid they pushed the development closer to the wetland, but they're trying to create a bigger buffer for the neighbors. So it's just going to be a tough site. If you make a big buffer for the neighbors, which is great, then they ended up, I think they're right at the 30-foot mark from the wetland. So it's just going to be tough. So.
Can I have comments from the public?
Yes, can I speak, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Mary, I agree with you. It's a tough site for that project and it really shouldn't be there. But my question goes back to the ORAD. When I was reading the developer's plans, it said that all abutters were notified by certified letter and we had 10 days to repeal. Is that correct?
All right. So yeah, when the ORAD was done, we can look at that. The abutters should have been notified by certified mail. And so that would have been for the ORAD. And then once the ORAD was issued, you would have had 10 days to appeal. So the notification is just for the public hearing for the ORAD. And that they don't have to notify you once the ORAD is issued, but they do have to notify you for the public hearing. Like tonight, you're participating in the meeting. So yes.
So I can tell you, I never received a certified letter about the ORAD. I don't know if any of our other abutters, and I'm considered an abutter of this property. I don't know if anyone else on here who's considered an abutter received a certified letter when this was done. But I know we didn't. I can count on my hand the certified letters I get, and that wasn't one of them. And then my other question is, even if we request, like Craig had asked, another wetland study and we're willing to pay for it, can we do that?
I think you could, as the residents, with the permission of the landowner, hire an independent consultant and have that done. I think that would be permissible. Yep.
And would it be accepted?
And then I'm not sure if we can, I would have to look into how that, I think there would have to be a procedural issue with the ORAD to make an appeal. I don't know that the board would, I don't think the board can overturn their ORAD, but if you had another independent study which widely differed, it could perhaps influence the discussions. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you.
What we could do is look into the survey mailing that was sent out and look through the minutes. Because they would have had to have survived that they did receive people's mailings. And we have other comments from the public. Because at this point, we certainly appreciate everyone's comments and the information that you're providing. And that
I have a comment. Excuse me.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. We've seen your name.
Yes. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Sue Perry. I live at 24 Hazeltine Road. Excuse me. I have a little laryngitis. I just have a couple of points that I need that I'd like your help looking at. The inconsistencies on the maps. Some houses that are on Whitney are not on the maps that are being used. I've walked that site myself with part of the conservation committee and other members. It was not on the books, but I did walk that area myself. It is a hand's reach away from some of these properties, and these properties on Whitney are very, very close to the wetlands themselves, the houses, not just the land that's there. The traffic there currently has to accommodate schools. There are many, many buses that come up through that area. When there's a funeral, that street is packed. I'm sure that people have been and they've had to go to a funeral there and also park up on Fisk and Hazeltine and Whitney. The water damage is going to be extreme. That's something that if you could look into that with us, for us. And the trees in this area have been falling. I've lived in this home for 29 years. And the wetlands are being taken over by houses. Once you put a house on it, you can't grow anything else on that. So I appreciate you listening to what I have to say, and I appreciate you looking into these inconsistencies in this plan. And have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. And any other members of the public? Because we certainly will look into the comments that you've made, and I'm sure that this will be on our agenda at another time. So thank you so much for waiting to the end of our meeting to discuss this. And I believe it'll be on our following meeting as well. So Mary, anything else to say?
Oh, Chris, this is Mike. Can I say something? I just want to understand, when is the deadline again for comments going back that's going back to the planning board, to the planner? Is that correct? Can you just?
Yeah, the deadline, I believe, is the 11th.
So that's the same day we meet.
We meet on the 13th. Let me just check my
I'm
email.
looking, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm looking at October. It's Wednesday's the 4th. The 11th is a Wednesday. Am I looking at the right calendar? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we do meet on the 11th.
Okay.
And that's our next meeting.
So basically we have time to perhaps staff, Mary, could write a letter summarizing our concerns, and we could review it and potentially approve it on the 11th.
Yes. So yeah.
Does that fit in?
So this is what his letter says. Kindly respond by the 11th for an anticipated hearing date of October 18th. So if your board does not meet before the 18th, please submit comments as soon as possible after your committee has had a chance to review. So I think there's potential. I could put a letter together. We could review it at our next meeting and still get it to him before the 18th.
Whose meeting is the 18th?
That would be the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Okay. Because the Zoning Board of Appeals is the reviewing body for this 40B development. Is that right? Your understanding, Grace? Yeah, they're the reviewing body, and they do want to take into consideration the comments from all the other boards. Yeah. And I do believe that we also get to review with the notice of intent. So there will be 2 reviews for us. Did you guys all get the email from Mike? I think he sent it out to all the boards with this letter. The date.
Yep.
he sent it was, this came out on Monday, the 18th. And there's a Dropbox link in his letter, which has all the application materials. I have not dug into it too deeply, except to know that I saw the original plans and I know there's new plans. And then I've done 2 site walks on the property as part of town meetings.
And this information be on our website, or could it be, please?
Yeah, Grace, do you think you can put this stuff on the website? Is it already on the website under something else, or?
It's not currently on the conservation page, but it can be.
Yeah.
So that way people attending our meeting can look there as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Grace.
May I ask, is your webpage linked to the town hall webpage, the Town of Upton webpage, or is it a separate webpage?
It's within the Town of Upton. If you go to government, tomorrow we are going live with our new website.
Yeah.
The current website is, if you go to government, boards and commissions, Conservation Commission should be under that. It should be similar, if not the same, with the new website.
Yeah, and all this will go on the new website. I don't want Grace to have to put it up twice. So the new website goes live supposedly on Friday. So if you wait till after the weekend, that's when the information will be available.
Sorry, it goes live Friday, not tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions or comments at this point?
So Mike, I guess your thought is, well, if people have specific comments, get them to me. I will also make a review. I'll try to get it out to you before the next meeting, and then we can talk about it at the next meeting before submitting it to the zoning board.
Mary, that sounds good. Just to reiterate what you said, if individual commissioners have comments, send them just to Mary. Don't send them to everybody. That would be a discussion outside of a meeting, so we can't do that. But if anyone has comments to Mary, please get them to her so she can consider them.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
How about a second? Okay, let's do a voice vote. Chris, aye.
Tom, I.
Alan, I.
Marcella, I.
Mike, aye.
Thank you for everyone's work tonight and your participation in our longer meeting than usual. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Grace, and all the members who have attended. We'll see you in our next meeting. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night,
Thanks.
everybody.